Welcome back to Java Programming for Beginners, and today I want to focus on what an array is. But before I get to that, I want to make a change to our input class. It was something I tried to do earlier, but it didn't really work right away, so I kind of put it off until now. So for our getInteger and our getDouble classes, we want to get rid of this finally method. And then what we're going to do instead is we're going to say under the integer.parseInt, we're going to say valid equals true. And then down here we're going to say valid equals false. System.out.println we're going to say invalid re-enter. And then we'll copy and paste this down to this method. Get rid of the finally down here, and then also put valid equals true. And what this does for us is it gives us kind of a safeguard, I guess. So you can type in your, John Doe, or whatever, and if I don't type in a number, I just do like this, it's going to say invalid, re-enter. And then if I put in a number, it'll be good. And then I could enter my height, and I'll do the same thing for the weight. If I enter this, it'll say invalid, re-enter, and then I could enter a number, and everything will be good. But actually, I did make one mistake. Make sure you, on your invalid re-enter, you do print and not print ln, because we want to make sure that they type on the same line that our text appears on. And I just think that looks good. But anyways, let's get back to arrays. Arrays are going to save your life, because arrays are one of the most amazing things in programming. They're extremely important, and you could not make a computer game without an array. I mean, honestly, it's not worth doing without an array, so we have to cover these. So what an array is, it's really simple. An array, and to make sure you guys understand what I'm saying array. An array is basically a list of variables. And the reason why it's so important is because you're not always going to know how many variables you need to accept, or how many variables you're going to need, how many variables you're going to need to add later, and it's going to save you so much time because you can use a loop to cycle through an array of variables, and it makes life so much easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to define an array. And I'm just going to start with a string. This isn't going to fit our program because I want to just define it for you. So we're going to say string names equals new string. Okay, so what this basically means is these two brackets represent an array. So we want a string array called names equal to a new string array with 5 elements. And an element is just a position in the array. So there are 5 things in this list of strings. And so to assign a variable to one of them, we're going to say names bracket 0 equals Joe. And then we'll say names bracket 1 equals John. That's a weird way to say it. Spell John. Names, and so on. I mean, you could define them this way, or you could accept user input for each one of these, and it just makes your life so much easier. You have no idea. But today what we're going to do with our array is we're going to change up our program a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to person, and we're going to make a new method called, well, first let's make a new constructor. Now this is called overriding. I think it's not overriding, is it? I don't think so. But basically what we're going to do is we're making a second constructor, and as you can tell it looks the same as this one, except we don't have any parameters. So what we're going to do with our parameters is we're going to say name equals, well, yeah, name. We're going to pretty much leave everything blank. And then we're also going to make another method, and we're going to say public void get info. And what this method is going to do is it's going to get all the info for the person class using the input class that we have. So we're just going to go over to main and copy all of this. Well, actually we're going to cut it because we don't need it here anymore. We're going to paste it here. And then we're going to change a few things. We're going to say name is capitalized, age is okay, H is capitalized, weight is capitalized. But another thing we need is we need an instance of the input. So we're going to say inputs equals new inputs. And voila, get info is going to do everything that our main class was doing to get info for this person. So now we can go back to our main and we can get rid of all these variables right here. It makes our main method so much simpler. And then we can actually get rid of this constructor here. And we can get rid of this over here. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to make an array of people. So we're going to say person brackets people equals new person. And since we're going to have to enter these in manually, I'm going to recommend that you only do 2 because, yeah, we want to keep this tutorial short-ish, even though I'm already at 8 minutes. So, so now we have an array of people, so we need to assign values to our variables. So we're going to make a for loop. We're going to say integer index equals 0. As long as index is less than 2, index is going to be incremented. And this is why we always set our index equal to 0, because our array always starts at position 0. Inside the array, when we say create an array of 2 elements, it's going to make an element at position 0 and position 1. And those are your 2 elements. So that's why we always start things at 0, because it's more convenient when you're working with an array. So then we're going to say people at index, at our variable index, dot get info. And so it's going to get all the info for that person. And then what are we going to do after we get all the info for the 2 people? We're going to do another loop. We're going to say index equals 0, index is less than 2, index is incremented. And you might be, since we covered variable scope in the last tutorial, we know that we can reuse our index variable because this index variable scope ends after this line. So then we can say people at index dot print. And so that makes our program so much simpler. So let's go ahead and hit run. And we have an error. So what could possibly be our error? Whoa! It's because I didn't mention something about arrays. When we create this array, what this does is it's allocating memory space for these two elements. Now what it's not doing is it's not initializing this people variable. So remember when we were talking about objects and you have to instantiate an object before you can use it? Well, we have not instantiated this person object. So what we need to do before we get the info of this person, so let's add some brackets because now we need 2 lines for this for loop. We're going to say people index equals, sorry, Flux is doing auto complete, equals new person. And we're going to use that constructor that we just made. So now we initialized our person object inside the array, and then our getInfo method is going to get all the info for this person. So we can enter a name. We can say John Doe is 43, 6.3, weighs 215, and then it's going to ask for another name. So we say Jane Doe is 26, 6, well, probably not 6 foot, 5'1". Enter weights, let's say 90, and then there we go. We get our output for our 2 people in our array. And so this makes programming so much easier because now you don't have to code for every single thing. You can make an object with the correct methods, put it into an array, and then just iterate through the array using a loop. And so this makes your life so much easier. But when I'm looking at this code, I'm seeing that it can be simplified a little bit because we have this constructor that's essentially not doing anything. And then we're calling this method called getInfo. So how about we get all the info inside our person method or our constructor? So let's go back to our person class, and we're going to get rid of all this inside this constructor, and really we're just going to say getInfo because we already have the code written, right? There's no reason to copy it. Let's just say getInfo, and then instead of making this public, let's make it a private method. That way you can't access it from outside the class. So if I save, I have an error because you can't access this method anymore. I don't need the brackets anymore because there's only 1 line of code. And let's run. Everything works exactly the same way. Now one thing I don't like is how the name is, it sort of just, goes on to the next line after the weight of the last person. So let's just go ahead and change that. We'll go into person, and inside of getInfo, let's just put an escape character in here and say new line. That way when we run this, we can do that, and then we're working with a new name, and it's more clear that you're doing for information for the next person. But that's how arrays work. They're really nice, and actually there's one more thing I should show you. When I said less than 2, this is actually a very bad way to do this, because right now we are hard coding this number into our code, which we have to do at some point. But you know what we can do instead? We can say people, which is our array, dot length, and that is the size of our array. That way, if we wanted to change how many people are in our array, the only number you have to change is this one. And if you wanted to take it another step forward, you could say integer number of people equals 5, and then we could put number of people, and then that would create the array for 5 people. And as you can see, there's a lot more, so I'm not going to go through them. One more thing before I finish this video. If you were to use an integer like this is an integer that you would not want to change during the program. So there's a keyword, an identifier that you can use, and we're going to say final integer. And what this means is I cannot change this integer later on in the program. This integer is set to this number. And this is very, very convenient because if I want to change the number of people that can fit in a database, I can just change this one number and it changes everything for the rest of the program. So arrays are extremely convenient for programming, and that's really all there is to using an array. Just make sure you don't try to access an element that doesn't exist, and you'll be okay. So that's all I wanted to cover in this tutorial. Arrays are a pretty big topic, but at this point you guys know enough to make a decent computer game. So we might cover 1 or 2 topics here or there, but I think it's almost time for us to start working on a computer game. So thanks guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe so you can watch the next videos on how to make a computer game in Java. And I will see you guys next time. Oh, remember, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below.